So are we alive now?
I think I say Facebook sometimes on accident,
Are
but
we
it's
live?
YouTube. Yeah, we are live.
Well, if we are live, then I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thanks, everybody, for coming. And finally, after, what, a year and a half, we can actually meet in person and actually have this discussion instead of over some face pad of some sort. Okay, good. Welcome, everybody. Our first thing is approval of the the May 11th minutes. I have a motion.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. Program financial update.
Mr. Chairman, each member of the committee received a financial summary in their packets, and I'll just briefly point out that this year we have released funding to 3 grant applicants that were approved by the committee. Bait House completed their kitchen project, and they report that project has really helped them to increase sales tremendously. They're doing very well and already starting to think about their next expansion.
We didn't get any samples, did we?
We did not get samples. RDJMD LLC is the company that purchased the YMCA. They've also completed their initial phase of renovations. They've received their occupancy permit and have moved into the YMCA and are starting to operate out of that facility. So we did release the grant funds to that company. And then Your Turn Special Events LLC, Ms. Cazetta Poole, has completed her renovation and occupancy of the commercial property on Buchanan Street for her event business. So we continue to work with the other applicants and make sure that they are completing their projects as promised. And when we have all of the evidence needed, we will release funds to them as well. When we look at the funding that's been approved to date, the funding that we started the year with, we have a little over $75,000 remaining in uncommitted funds. We're trying to keep about $25,000 of that available for some marketing commitments that the city has for this is for the entire city, not just our program, which leaves us about $50,000 in available funding to date. We are working with the city manager and city commission and looking at ways that we might be able to have an additional allocation into the program this year to keep up the good work. But hopefully that gives you an idea of where we're at this moment in terms of our available funding.
It was brought to my attention, and Paul, I think maybe this is as good a time as any to have that conversation. Do you want to start that conversation?
Just for the record, Al was at the bank and I was walking in from lunch, so we talked a little bit about a couple of things. One thing that when I look at the allocation of funding and what's available and stuff, and I see Market Street Collective up there, which was approved in 2019, and I've got 139,000 allocated for that. So when I read the minutes from last month, I mean, I don't know his name, but I don't know if it's mentioned in there or not, but he's saying that project is going to start in the fall of 2021, which I don't know if that's true or not true or whatever. I'm not here to say that's going to happen or not, but he is saying that he's not going to complete it until 2022. So best case scenario, let's say from his projections in those meetings, in those minutes there, is he's going to be done in 2022. So to me, I would rather say, take that 139,620, put it back into the fund so that we can fund the applicants that are ready to go, and then him come back in, or either him come back and reapply, or, that money is just earmarked for the 2022 funds that come in. So that way we're not, because when I look at the numbers coming in today, we have requests that exceed the 76,000. I don't know if I'm explaining it right or not, but, to me, I would rather get the money out now for projects that are rolling than
It's a project that's not going to get completed till substantially in the future.
22,
Yeah,
so next fiscal year. And that, from his projections, is best case, because we wouldn't fund it until it's complete. So now if he was saying it's going to be done late 21, I would say, okay, hold it. But into 22, to me, I would rather pass it out to the people that are ready to go, but.
And so can we bring that back into the funds available and then say, not that we dislike your project, but I think it, in my opinion, exceeds the time limit, and I think those funds could be used currently a lot better.
Yeah, those are great points, and I know that's a large amount that we have committed to a project that has stalled for quite some time. We're looking at that closely. We've not made a commitment to extend the deadline at this time. I appreciate the suggestions of this committee. I'll certainly review that with our city manager, and we'll report back. What I will say is that the requests that we have today, if we exclude the Catian LLC, which is a small city tap house, that's a very large amount that I'll talk about further when we get to that piece. But if we exclude that, we have requests for or recommendations for funding of just under 20,000. So we can cover those items if we set aside the small city tap house based on what we have available. But I definitely understand what the committee is, or what members of the committee are suggesting in terms of Market Street Collective, and we can review that internally and report back.
I think that at least it'd be my recommendation to management that we strongly look at doing that, because to have money committed for that, and this program's rolling, and I want to be able to take care of any of the small businesses, minority businesses, whatever businesses that are out there currently that are going to be turning things over in 30, 60, 90, 120 days, something in the short term.
Great point.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I agree. I don't think it would be good for other businesses that are out there maybe wanting to get some funds, and this is tied up. As mentioned, if we want to if this isn't going to be ready till next year, again, on the front end, maybe hold these funds for that and then go ahead and utilize them this time.
So what do, Mr. Ludwig, what do we need to do? I mean, we've made the commitment to them. Is that how I understand it? I want to make sure I'm correct, okay? So do we pull back our commitment and say, you're going to have to reapply at a later date? Help me, how do we want to do this in the proper way?
At the current point, the funds he had, I believe for that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but they have until the end of 21 to complete the project. I believe they got one extension already.
That's what
So-
the minutes say.
Yeah, so currently, those funds are still allocated to that per the grant agreement. If for some reason they're not going to complete the project by 21 and they do not get another extension, at that point, there is flexibility to say to them that this will no longer be available.
Point blank
But at this point, I don't think we can't just vote to rescind that grant agreement since we have a contract with them. If they don't comply if they're not going to finish the project by 21, that would give us an option to revisit the funds, the
I
amount.
hate to wait till the end of 21.
Well, I don't think, not to interrupt, I don't think I'm saying like revoke the funds. I'm just saying pull the 139 instead of the amount available now, which is what it's coming out of. It's an accounting function, not a legal function.
Okay, yeah.
It's saying
Okay,
that
put it into
the
22.
funds are going to come out of the 22 funds, not
Okay.
out of these funds, so that we can pass, and I don't know if those came out of the
Accounting.
19 funds, if in 19 they were earmarked, and we've been carrying them since 19, because if so, you know, I would rather get that money out into the community and active.
Right.
So not necessarily to
So
your level
I guess my
yet.
point was that, like, we don't need to take a motion
Okay,
to
that's
do
what I
that.
wanted.
Because to Paul's point, if what ends up happening is we want to earmark those funds in the future and still stay consistent with the grant agreement, that's definitely an option that we have.
So does that allow us to have more funds currently available to,
Not to interrupt. So I think the problem would be is if we say, hey, we're going to earmark 22 funds for this,
Yeah.
and then he gets the best contractor ever, and then boom, they finish in 21, and then we're like, okay, now we can't comply with our contract,
Right.
which is
Yeah,
an
that was
issue.
my point. Yeah.
Right, so it's, to me, it's both an accounting thing and a legal thing to say, okay, and maybe it's a conversation with him, are you absolutely sure? And maybe we do an addendum to the grant that says, we're going to keep the allocation and we'll give you the give or take is we'll give you an extension into 22 as opposed to if you don't finish by 12/31/21, we're pulling it. You know what I mean? So
I think that's kind of what we're all saying. So, and I think you to have a conversation and said, look, we don't dislike the project. Do you really have any concrete reason that you'd get it in 21? Even Schaefer couldn't finish it. Do you, would you like us to come back and do it in a 22? And hopefully they're decent people and say, look, we either can or we can't. And they give you a good reason. Here's a contract from a contractor that says, I am starting on date certain and X days. I wouldn't sure want to start building right now.
well, I think we're all for the project. We all want it to happen.
Yeah, the
and,
project
you know.
is not the problem. It's the accounting and how we have to allocate the funds, and we want to make sure that we're giving most bang for the buck for everybody.
Is there a current need for the 139 right now? Is that why we're making
Yeah,
that
there will be.
proposal? There will be, okay. I was just curious.
Once we go through today, we're getting real close to, by September, being out of money.
Got you. I didn't know if there was just like an overwhelming of applications or outstanding applications that are out there that we haven't gotten through yet.
We do have a few that have come in, and we continue to field calls, and I'm encouraging people to continue to submit applications. But to your point, Mr. Chairman, we are coming up against that available budget.
Yes.
And so I think these are great suggestions that we'll certainly take a look at, along with our efforts to try to identify some additional funds to bring into the program. But I think these suggestions on Market Street Collective are really good things that we should take a look at internally that could help us out.
Okay. That, I think that puts out on the table what we're trying to do. Naomi, would you agree that's at least?
Yeah, I do have a few things that I'd like to follow up with our legal department.
Okay,
But yeah.
and that's, yeah, because you have the real vote.
And the other thing I would just add is, Family Health Services, there's some public funds that flow through that company from their application. So where they are today from where they were after the whole COVID shakeout and government money, I don't know if they're going to necessarily need that 65. So we may just want to follow up with them and say, because my understanding just driving by is I think that they've put in the dentist stuff already, but I don't know that for sure. So it might just be a follow-up, because if they're not going to use it, we'll pass it out.
They've gotten a number of grants that I'm aware of. So,
And that's a little different scenario where it's not a private owner and personal equity. I mean, it's a,
yeah, because they're getting money from everywhere. Again, I think the overriding factor, and everybody correct me if I'm wrong, is we want to get as many dollars available here between now and the end of the year to, as I said, to give to good causes.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask so
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, you guys are CPAs and accountants, so you would probably know better than I would. Does it make sense for these larger projects to spread them out over a couple of years, just to maybe have more money in the pot, like during a particular fiscal year, or does that probably not make
a lot of
sense?
the grants that we make, the banks or other financial institutions make it contingent on the fact that you have got that in other words, here's my project, you get 300,000 from the bank, I'm picking numbers, okay? And you get 100,000 from the city. Well, we'll give you 300,000, but we have to see a commitment for the 100,000. And that's kind of where we've been having to go there. But I do think, Paul, I think we had a discussion that, possibly splitting some of this stuff up and.
yeah, and to go back to your question there is, if I'm, a lot of this, like if you look at one of the applicants today, he's building on, he's making an addition. And we're saying, hey, if he applies for, say, 300 grand, the contractor that does the work needs his money now.
True.
So for us as a committee, it might be
Yeah.
better to spread it out, but that guy needs his money now to pay.
Sure.
And the way
That
that we
makes
do it
sense.
is they pay the contractor their money.
Yep.
And then we reimburse their money. So fiscally, I think for most people, they want it, the sooner they can get it, the better from this committee.
We're that bridge,
Yeah.
we're that bridge to help them get that outside third-party funding.
And I will say just one more thing. You know, I work at a bank. We will look at a lot of commercial deals, and sometimes there's just, and I think what this committee is set up to do is, hey, I want to do said project, and it's $100,000, but I only have 60. So then the bank will say, hey, we can get you the 60, we'll lend you the 60, but you're short 40, and this committee comes in and fills that void.
Yeah.
But what the bank does is they give them the whole 100, and then the money from here pays the bank down. So it's 60 in the end. So it's kind of like a bridge financing where sometimes deals wouldn't happen without the committee pledging that money.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Makes sense.
Is that, okay. Our first application, okay, first of all, anything else on the financial update? If not, how about the first application is Dot Investments, Kitty Corral. And it's the last time I have a conflict and will not be voting on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee may recall that this application was presented at the last committee meeting, but could not be voted on because we did not have a quorum, given the chairman's need to abstain. But Kitty Corral is a child care and preschool facility here in Sandusky. It's been in operation since 1973. I think it may be the largest child care facility or operation here in the city. They have 2 locations, and they recently applied to do some exterior upgrades to their facility on Follett Street. The total project cost is just about $9,000. This involves sign repairs, landscaping, and parking lot resurfacing. The applicants did have to proceed with their project after our last meeting and have since completed the project. I've not been out there to see it, but they report that it did turn out very nicely. They are still hopeful that they can receive partial reimbursement through this program, and I do think that would be appropriate given our need to delay their approval. So at this time, I'm recommending that we provide a grant in the amount of $3,500 to the company for their exterior improvement project.
I will say, I reviewed it. Kitty Corral's been around for a long time. I think I spent some time there in my youth. But my biggest concern about this application is that there's a landscaping cost, which is 37% of the project. And I have concerns that if we start landscaping for people, that it's just gonna, I don't know, just to me, that's not a economic development type thing. You know, it's mulch is gonna be gone in a year. So I have a hard time with that piece of it. Overall, I think it's a good project. I think it fits what we do here, but I just think we're a little high on the total project cost and including the $3,200 of landscaping in there.
Yeah, so I agree with Paul. I think, landscaping is here. This summer could be gone maybe next year, right? So are we paying for something just temporarily, or are we going to be funding things that's going to be permanent? So, that would also be my concern as well. Unless it's, I guess we don't really know exactly what the landscaping is. Is it permanent? Is it going to be there for years to come, or is it just something that's just going to be done this year? And
It's not like asphalt, right? I'm not gonna have any discussions, okay, just,
Yeah, the largest component of the landscaping is the arborvitae, which I do think typically is intended to last for a number of years. I think in speaking with the applicant, the main function of that was screening. if I understand them correctly, the area that they're in does have some property owners that don't maintain their properties to the same level that these folks do. But I can also understand the comments of the committee, and I think if someone would want to make a motion for a different grant amount, that's certainly well within the abilities of the committee members.
Which I'm happy to make a motion and just remove the labor costs essentially, which is about $1,000, and say that I would move to approve a grant in the form of $2,500 to Kitty Corral or
Second.
So I
Dot
understood,
Investments. I would make a motion for a grant in the amount of $2,500, subject to the terms outlined in the recommendation to Dot Investments.
I just want to make sure I agree, okay. Motion made, and,
Second.
I'm abstaining, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay. I think that's points well taken, and I think in the future, when we come in with landscaping, mulching, weeding, and it makes it look nice, but I think it's got to be something more on a permanent basis. In other words, if they,
Well, and I think our goal in the committee is the economic development, and
okay, the next one is ESB Properties.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, FSB Properties LTD is owned by Steve and Frank Hafner. They each own 50% of the business. They've owned the building at 135 to 145 Columbus Avenue since 1994. You may be aware this is the home of Crush Wine Bar and Mona Pizza, two of our stronger members of our downtown business community. Crush Wine Bar recently expanded their business by conducting a patio expansion on the backside of the building. That project did not receive any financial assistance from the city, but it has been completed and is a nice addition to the property. The building owners now are looking to undertake a major investment in the property through the replacement of the roof and renovation of the front facade. The front facade alterations will require approval by the Landmark Commission. They estimate presenting to the Landmark Commission in August. The total project cost for this improvement is just over $50,000. I'm suggesting that we provide an Economic Development Fund grant in the amount of $10,000 to assist this project. This project is in an area where we're seeing some significant investment, but there are a number of buildings that could use a bit of a boost and a facelift, and this is one of those. So I'm excited that we have the opportunity here to assist them with the improvements to this building.
They're coming down this afternoon. I went by, you can just see where the roof is starting to, and all of a sudden, we've got the Ogilvy building across the way. We've got the Mall City Tap House, and we've got the people redoing Birch's building, and I'm using names, not addresses only, because I've been around forever, and, but I think as you look down that corridor, and I think once you hit that Market Street on down, that's critical. I think I would definitely be in favor of this grant, but sir, anybody in the committee have any questions? If not, I would take a motion on this one to give the $10,000 grant.
so moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I would just say, I think this is a good project. I like the amount of equity that they're putting in,
Yeah.
that, you know, our piece is relatively small, and it's a building and that is visible downtown, so,
Two good businesses.
yeah. Can't have a leaky roof.
Restaurant and a pizza place. What else could you have?
Yeah. Can't have a leaky roof on your Mona Pizza. That's no good.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is Keaton LLC, did I say it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Kedian LLC is the limited liability company that owns the buildings at 202 and 216 Columbus Avenue. These are home to Small City Tap House and the Clag Brewery. Just to be clear here, and I was a little confused when I wrote the summary, but I've since gotten clarification. Our applicant and the business owner, the building owner is, I may mispronounce this, but Fu Hong Nu, also known as PK. Ka is the operator of the restaurant and brewery. So I didn't want to confuse anyone by making them think that those are the same person. But our applicant, it goes by the nickname PK, and what you'll see in the packet is that this company has invested an incredible amount in this property to date, about $2.6 million, and they've really done a phenomenal job turning this location around into what has really become a regional and in some ways even nationally known destination. What I think is really exciting about it is that it's a year-round attraction in terms of the brewery and the restaurant, and being a somewhat seasonal community, we need more places like this. What they're proposing today and going forward is a total exterior renovation of the building at 202 Columbus Avenue. This is the 3-story historic building. The total renovation costs are $617,000, and this is really about stabilizing the building through masonry repairs and replacing the windows so that we no longer have a boarded up building right in the center of our downtown. These improvements have been approved by the Architecture Review Board. The business owners are working closely with Rob Decker, the architect who prepared the plans that are in your packet. Really, we look at this as a renovation that's really going to be hugely beneficial for the city of Sandusky in terms of our historic and aesthetic character. This is the type of investment that doesn't necessarily bring a lot of return to the business. And so when we look at the total investment over the number of years and include this, we're looking at an investment of over $3 million. And that's why the city manager and I thought it was appropriate to recommend that the city provide $300,000 in grant funding to the project. The company does have a letter of intent from Civista Bank that'll be providing the financing on the project. Our grant funds will take out the bank loan as they're released. We are proposing to release our funds over a 3-year period. So to your point, Jamarcus, we don't want to totally take up all of the capacity this year and next year over the fund. So we've spoken with the applicants and explained that we can only release our funds over a 3-year period. I anticipate a fairly modest release this year, followed by 2 significant releases over the next 2 years. And I will point out that this will require approval by the City Commission, but I would greatly appreciate the recommendation of this committee as we bring this really important and in some ways transformational project to City Commission for their approval.
Mr. Chairman, I note that I have a conflict on this one.
Jonathan, can you elaborate on the proposed dispersals for the 3 years?
Correct.
Do we have actual dollar amounts?
We've not specified the actual dollar amounts that'll be released each year, just that it'll be released over a 3-year period. Certainly, we have to take into consideration the capacity of the fund over those 3 years. That's probably something that you may be thinking ahead to the grant agreement phase, Law Director Heil, and we probably will need to sharpen our pencils and clarify that with the applicant when we get to that stage. But we've not specified at this point what that'll be.
Okay.
Again, that whole corridor as you come down with those windows put in there instead of the boarding up that was there when I was a kid, back in the 1600s or at least. But I think it's, again, we're taking from the end of this block down to the end of that block. I think I'm saying that right. And I think bringing things and making it look very nice. something I could definitely support. Can I have a motion?
I would move to approve the recommended amount to be dispersed over 3 years in accordance with the grant agreement and the approval, contingent on the approval of City Commission approving those amounts for each year.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 So Derek's Diner LLC.
All right, Derek's Diner LLC has identified a new location to relocate their business. Some members of the committee may recall that they had previously been located on the city's east side, but they have identified a new location on Venice Road. Their lease was up on their east side location, and they've identified a location on Venice Road that's more suitable for them to grow their business. They have applied for assistance with their signage expenses as well as a small amount for menu design. The total project cost is $6,534. I will point out that this company did receive grant funding. I believe that was in 2017 for their prior location. This is a much smaller amount that we're looking at today. I will also point out that the company, as you may have seen in the packet, included a quote from Brady Signs, and I'm going to let the law director expand on this, but at this time, what we're recommending is a grant in the amount of $3,267 to the company with the condition that they identify a different sign company to undertake these improvements, and that we reimburse funding, release funding upon evidence that they've completed the project in accordance with that condition.
And just to clarify, per the city charter, commissioners cannot have direct or indirect benefit of a contract with the city. And this grant, because it is in whole, as proposed, would potentially, as proposed, the original quote would potentially involve payment through to a company owned by a commissioner. That's the reason for the stipulation on the sign. And I also want to clarify on how applications and how the funds are actually dispersed, just so we're really clear on this. And I know that a couple of you have touched on this, and we've touched on this earlier today, about how funds are not actually allocated and given out until we've confirmed that all the conditions of the grant agreement have been complied with, that, you know, they've provided documentation sufficient to show that the project was completed. And in this case, that would also be that they've complied with all of our charter requirements in order to actually receive the funds. So that's just kind of some additional clarification on although they've gotten a quote from Brady Signs, it does not require them to use Brady Signs, and so long as they comply with those conditions, the city would be in good standing, and they could potentially receive those funds. So that was to clarify Jonathan's point.
You know, I think we talked about this early on in the committee too, like in the first years too, about, you know, do they, if they're going to use Brady signs, you know, I don't think there's 500 sign companies in this area, number one. I think there's 3, if that. And, you know, so we talked about at length years ago, do you need to get a second quote if you're going to use Brady? And you know, there's not everybody is a low-cost provider in town, so sometimes you want better service. So, you know, I think it's unfair to say you have to get another quote. You know, they're less than Brady, so you have to go with that person because the service might be not nearly as good. I mean, Brady's an established company in this area, and you know, so I think that's why one reason why we at that time said you don't need to get extra quotes. And I don't, you know, when I read some of the comments, I don't even know if Mr. Brady, the commissioner, is actually a owner of Brady Signs, and I don't know how, unless he's disclosed.
His son owns it.
So that's another. He doesn't even own the place. So, in terms of, you know, I don't know if that's true or not. So you know.
So I guess I just want to clarify to make it really clear. So it is not that recipients of grants can never use Brady Signs. It's that grant dollars cannot go to Brady Signs. So if this was a grant for say that the project was a $50,000 project and a portion of it was the sign, but the grant funding was for something else, that is acceptable. It's in this case.
Because in
the quotes, and there's one other thing too. And so because the entire project is signage as proposed, there would be a stipulation that they cannot go to Brady Signs for that.
Because in essence, some of the equity dollars could have went to Brady Signs.
Exactly. If they decide to do business with Brady Signs on their own, that is their business. We do not tell private companies how to do business.
It's a good practice.
Thank you. But it's just that there's a stipulation on the actual grant dollars themselves cannot directly go to a business owned by a commission.
And I think that's an important point. As mentioned, there aren't a whole lot of signage companies in the area. But in order for the owner of this establishment needing to get quotes and those types of things, I don't see any issue with that. But again, as explained, that the grant monies cannot go to, now I don't know who owns Brady Signs or what, but I think that if that were to become an issue, then that would be resolved before it would get to the commission, city commission table. So I don't really see an issue as long as it's explained as to how this process could work. And then if the owner of this establishment is under the understanding that he may not be able to use the company that he got the quote from, I don't see a problem with that.
And that was actually the second part of this, is that for the application process, we do obviously ask for quotes and information, but those are just quotes and information. Those are not stipulations. They must use what they provide in the quote. They must substantiate at the end that the work was done under the terms of the grant agreement.
So how do we proceed on this one?
Can I ask one more question before that, Mr. Chairman? If you will?
Sorry.
So just so for clarity, because if let's say I'm Derek here, Derek's actually paying whoever with his own cash. And then our money, the grant money, is going to Derek.
Correct.
Right? So there's no matter even what you said, so what you said is completely accurate, but a phase two defense would be our money is given to the owner. It doesn't flow to anybody. It flows just directly to the owner.
Correct. But there's language that's it's direct or indirect benefit from a contract with the.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, it's the fact that the dollars flow into for this particular purpose.
Okay.
Now, if the grant is for a different purpose and they also use signage, that is perfectly acceptable.
So,
Mr. Chairman, just clarification. It's a lot. So is it an issue if, so Derek, if he uses the Brady signs or whatever, would that be a conflict?
that's his business. We don't tell people how they.
The motion, actually, we may not have made the motion, but the recommendation is to include as one of the conditions in the grant agreement that the grant funds cannot go towards any signage company that would create a conflict. So in order to receive those grant funds for signage, he would not be able to. But if he wants to hire Brady Signs, he's welcome to do so. It's a stipulation of the grant agreement would be.
And you will write that so that we stay out of trouble.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll just point out again that, it's really great to see this applicant identifying this new location. He wants to stay in Sandusky. I encourage you all to try to get out there in August when he does open up.
Actually moving to, I was trying to.
It's on Venice Road, I
Is
believe.
it the old Chicken and Waffles? Is it Chicken and Waffles right now? Is that where?
Oh.
I don't know.
The old teachers,
Yeah,
Yes.
that
Yeah,
property.
I think it's a Chicken and Waffles it's called now.
your age.
Yeah,
he
you're
will-
right, I did.
I knew
feature-
it too, Naomi, I hate to say it.
By the car wash.
Yeah.
And he will feature a drive-through at this location, which I know he's really excited about. And I think it could be a really good move for him, so hopefully the community supports him, and with the condition that was mentioned by the law director, hopefully our program can assist with this project.
And I'll add to that, yes, this young man has been here for quite some time, different businesses, provides awesome food. And I think with this Economic Development Committee, being able to help people like that, I think that is one of the most important things
Yes.
that we do, is that we help young people who sometimes appear or look like that they're not going to get a chance at all, to be able to help them to get to where they are trying to go. I know COVID really hurt a lot of different establishments and all, and he's been hanging in there. And so I think with the stipulations that were stated about the signage and all, I think this is a wonderful business to potentially to help continue the investment in.
So have you made a motion that, based on the contingencies, or what you would write into the grant?
Yeah, I would move that we approve the recommendation with the stipulation as described by Jonathan and all of the other normal grant requirements.
I'll second.
Second. Further discussion?
Just as a general point, I say it every time, but I don't like the 50-50. I never have all the way across the board. But I do think what Naomi was saying fits this one to the T, where, I'm a 60-40 allocation guy, but in this scenario, I think 50-50 is probably appropriate.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to say aye.
Pardon?
I said I forgot to say aye
In the opposed category or
Yes, no.
before category?
before.
SP Bikes,
Thank you. This is another great company. They just recently opened on Water Street. They are a full-service sales, rental, and service shop for electric bikes. It's really a growing industry. Unfortunately, this application was structured similarly to the previous one in terms of the signage company that they proposed to use. Because of timing, they did have to undertake their project after they submitted their grant application, but before they could come before this committee. So what I'm going to ask is that the committee table this item today, since as it's currently structured, I don't think we can approve it, given the guidance that we've received from the law director. So I'd ask that this be tabled. I'll be reaching out to the applicant and seeing if we can't find another way to assist their business. But as it's structured now, I don't think it's appropriate for us to move forward.
So moved.
moved, second.
Second.
Discussion? All in
I would
favor,
add
say-
just to
Yeah.
be fair across the board, I would add the 50-50 allocation conversation from before.
I
Noted.
think I agree with you on a lot of the bigger grants and stuff, but I think as we're going to some of the minorities, the women organizations, to give them a break, that the only place they're going to get it is a commission like this. And again, I wouldn't want to do that for a $500,000 project, but I think some of these smaller ones, I agree with Naomi's comments that we're probably their one and only shot at getting things done. So, I did call for a vote, didn't I? Yeah. Okay. Month of August, we're all taking a month off. Everybody can have a month off. Okay, now that we have people on the other side of us instead of on the view screen, anybody from the public have any comments?
I do.
Sharon, you have a comment
I know
or question?
y'all got my little note before the vote went down on the conflict with Brady signs. Did you get that? I gave it sent it to all of you.
I did not get it.
You didn't get it?
I think there was an email or something.
Yeah, it was, yeah, I got it, yep,
Okay, okay.
for the record.
So I appreciate what the attorney is trying to tell all of you, and he's exactly right. We're not denying Derek a sign. What we're denying is if he takes a city grant, you can't have a city commissioner involved in that. I would like to see something in the guidelines. Maybe, I know New York has, I've been doing some research on this, and New York has an affidavit that they have their people sign that are a recipient of a city grant, that they will not hire any councilman that is connected with this grant project.
I would never, ever, ever want City of Sandusky compared to New York in any way, shape, or form.
You
It's the
what?
most corrupt city, and yes, New York is, never mind.
I know,
You
but
set me off on that one.
I'm just saying,
In case you didn't notice.
I'm just saying what they have in place.
Is that-
I know what the charter states and everything, but I have seen some violations here, and it has to be perfectly clear to these applicants that they are not to use a city commissioner's company
And
on
Which
any
I
of
think
this
you're
stuff.
saying that it says that in the grant agreement, right?
I've seen that, a lot of
Not
applications
spelled
come
out, but you
through
can't
with
use it
this.
here.
So I'm asking, can you put something to make them more aware of what they're doing here
Make,
with these city
uh,
grants?
make the person that's applying for the grant the rules, or?
The applicant, yes. And also, I don't think this group is getting all the paperwork to understand what's going on with these grants. I also sent you an attachment. There is, for the development guidelines here, this is enclosed right here. The applicant knows the following should be submitted with your ED application, and it has 5 things here, and particularly lease agreement, purchase agreement, proof of ownership, third-party cost estimates, okay? The signage and facade things, the documents are not being presented correctly to this group. They're being excluded, okay? The development director claims he's doing this on the backside of the grant. Not according to this. It says it should be done on approval of the grant up front.
I had all the estimates in the packet.
If somebody's doing a sign job in a facade, the contractor should submit that to this group with his cost. We should know, there should be transparency, full transparency of that. That we know who's doing the sign work, who's doing the contracting work and all of that, subcontractors, whatever.
Let me just kind of say, yes, we do need to get some type of estimate. And I think this was explained a little bit earlier, is that when someone's getting estimates because they want to get a grant from the Economic Development Committee. So they get an estimate from a contractor that does a particular thing. As explained here, we're going to need something to say, hey, this is going to cost approximately this amount of money. But if there are some stipulations or things that prevent this person from proceeding with using that particular contractor, again, that stipulation was made earlier, that if there are going to be some type of conflict, they may not be able to use the particular person that they got an estimate from. They'll have to get it from someone else. So my point is that we need to have an idea as to how much it's going to cost. It comes with the paperwork to this committee. It's looked at, it's assessed, and if it looks like that there might be some type of conflict, then that communication is shared with the applicant. So I think I think I hear what you're saying, but I believe we've already kind of addressed that with the fact that
We
we may
should
or may
not
not.
be allowing applicants to submit false
That is not false.
information.
It's,
Your estimates
You're
and
saying
everything.
that-
They have to have, if they're hiring a signed person, okay, that needs to be signed by the contractor, that they're getting that sign done by that contractor and all the cost. Nothing should be
But there
falsified in that
is-
grant.
I think you kind of missed the point where we talked about if there's a person that submitted a cost estimate for the sign, and if that particular company has some type of conflict with us being able to award that, then the applicant is explaining, well, you may not be able to use that sign company. You might have to get another one. But what I'm saying is that we need to have some type of estimate to give us a ballpark figure as to what it's going to cost.
To me, they shouldn't be submitting estimates. It should be the right thing. It all should be, should be a contract of the exact figures they're submitting, because you're going by a percentage. You're going by a percentage of what they're submitting, the
So-
figures they're submitting.
I think I can clarify something here. The reason with any construction or any other contract, you get quotes, and those are an estimate. There might be slight changes to the project. And so this is all baked into the process already. Up front, we ask for all the information you're suggesting, and as Mr. Koch said, we get that, and that's reviewed to determine an appropriate grant amount. The grant is not actually delivered until we confirm that work, as was provided in the quotes, was actually done.
And the
So
exact amount that they
And the
paid.
exact amount that they paid. So the quotes are both for the applicant to get an idea of how much their project is going to cost them, and there might be some changes to those. And, for a lot of folks who come to this committee aren't sophisticated contractors. They're trying to do small projects and they're trying to get stuff. So the idea that they need to be held to an exact, super specific quote, which is meant to be an estimate, it's always described to be an estimate in these contract and construction work, I think is not how the program was ever designed to work. And then before any money is actually allocated, any money is actually given out the door, the city confirms that that work was done and that those dollar amounts are accurate and that grant amount is substantiated. And I know that Mr. Koch said previously, this committee also doesn't make a decision without reviewing the things on the front end to make sure that the proposed recommended amount is appropriate. So I think what you're raising, although important, absolutely, is already baked into the process and it's happening.
Well, what I'm trying to say here too is Savista Bank's usually the bank this is gap financing. The grants are gap financing with a loan most of
Sometimes,
the
yes.
time, okay? And he's the banker, he's banking on this grant coming through with this sign. There might be a sign for $6,000 in here. Well, if that comes up short and you deny this guy his $6,000, the bank loan caves in. That's what I'm saying. If you don't have real figures here right from the front end,
And I think what this committee is telling you is we do get those, we review those, and it's considered.
And I would, not to interrupt you, but I would tell you from the bank's perspective, we do our own due diligence on deals that what happens in this committee will not cave in a deal for us. I mean, it's separate and apart from the bank. I mean, the bank has a long process of underwriting and things like that. It's not.
well, I would be concerned if I was the banker and this guy's depending upon a sign grant for the whole package deal. If that doesn't work, then the bank part caves in because he's short money, because he's depending upon this. And he gets to the end of this, backloading here, what the director is doing, backloading and making sure the documents are there after the fact. And now this guy is cut short.
I don't know that we want to make assumptions that people are doing those types of things. Again, we are here to assist citizens in this community to kind of help get their feet off the ground to either get a business started, to fix up their home. So some of these things that you're discussing, Mrs. Johnson, we are not a bank. We are a city government that we're trying to assist people with some areas that they may be coming up short. Now, they have to pay all that money up front. We, again, as mentioned before, nothing's given out until all of the
I realize
parameters of the
that.
contract have been met. So,
But that guy could be in a real bind because you're doing that on the backside just before you give the
don't
grant
make
out.
assumptions about who's going to be in a bind or anything like that, because each individual that applies for a grant, they are adults, they are seeking assistance, and again, the parameters are stipulated and set out there. So I think we need to be careful about ascribing certain types of levels of understanding to people who apply for these things.
Well, how stupid is it for somebody to go and hire a city commissioner's company in one of these city grants? How stupid is that?
I think you're
Don't
starting to
do
get
that.
personal, and I think at this stage, I
We've
think that's
addressed
it,
the
Sharon. I
questions.
think you've crossed the line there. I think you've,
I just want you to be more cautious of what you're doing and have better guidelines.
Sharon, I will accept that, but I think what you said there was malicious and uncalled for.
From what I'm seeing in this paperwork, I don't think
Let's-
so.
Let's move on.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
Let's
geez,
move
I'm
on.
sorry, but
Yeah. I'm
Just
sorry, do you
be
have anything-
cautious.
Do you have anything else?
no.
Okay.
I'm gonna come to the podium because I'm used to doing that.
I'll tell you what, I'd love you to come up to the podium. Come on up.
My last name's Franz.
How much money are you going to give us now?
I love it.
You know who I am, but I'm gonna tell you, for those who don't know who I'm Tim Schwank. Good to be here, it's good to be here in person. Just a couple, and I'll try to take 5 minutes, because I'm used to doing 5 minutes as well with city commission.
You're on.
The number one question I have is on Derek's Diner, you know, and I love his food. You know, the guy's great, he's a good cook, and I don't want anybody to think I'm picking on him. But the question is what happened to the first sign? I mean, that was a fancy sign, state of the art. Did it end up in the dump somewhere where he couldn't have used it the second time? That's number one question. Number two is that someone just before this meeting sent me a screenshot from Facebook from December of last year where Derek was having tax issues. And one of the things on the application is that you cannot have any delinquent taxes, federal, state, or local. And so I'm hoping at this committee, the law director, whoever vets these
That's one of the things that we go through in the due diligence. Are all taxes paid, any liens? There's a whole, if you look at the application.
So you have done your due diligence, his tax issues have been cleared
If
up.
there is something there, and he said no, he has committed perjury. Is that not correct?
Not perjury.
No, I don't know about that, but
Fraud.
we asked them to provide all that information up front in the application and to provide us that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got a sheet right here where you just check mark,
Right.
all the way down the line, but I don't know if you're gonna look into it after I'm done here, or you already have, I don't
You
know.
brought something to our attention. Thank
Okay. The last part of that is, okay, so you approved 3,700, whatever it was. Acme Sign Company gets the contract and it only costs 2,000. Does he therefore get 2,000 reimbursed, or does he still get the entire 30?
He's reimbursed for what he actually pays.
Okay, so we may end up saving 30 or $1,700 or something to that effect.
In other words, as the law director explained, he gets whatever the costs are. In other
Okay.
words, the final total in costs. It's not upfront in money. It's at the end of the, if it costs $500, okay, or whatever.
Perfect.
But, not to interrupt you, but I think we've talked about it's like a percentage, what our approvals are percentages of, so like if it's approved at 50% and then his signage comes in less, he gets 50% of that. So say it was 6,400 originally, we approved 3,700, so 50%. So then he gets another one, it's 5,000, 50% of that, 2,500, he gets 2,500.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
That's correct, and unfortunately, my experience has been that these projects, the ones that I've seen, have always come in more than what they had budgeted, so, but yeah, Mr. Cook is exactly
We've
right.
yet to see that, but we're always hopeful.
We're keeping an eye out for it.
And the second item is, and still on the Brady thing and the sign with Derek, I have to give the law director a lot of credit because, this thing with Brady and signs has been going on for 5 years. Finally we figured it out, and again, nothing against Commissioner Brady, but it's taken forever to kind of figure this out and give you a lot of credit. The one thing that I did hear at the start of the meeting is a concern over funding sources for this particular committee. And I think it was Mr. Nickel that brought it up about reallocating funds from somewhere else. And I'm just looking at my crystal ball, and that kind of tells me that we're concerned about the admissions tax for this year, and maybe it's still not quite clear to me how we're getting an extra $500,000 out of Cedar Fair. The city manager at one time told me that it's tied in with the corporate offices, everybody moving here, and then now we're seeing them shifting from here down to Charlotte. So is this committee in jeopardy of losing funds from the admissions tax increase and the fact that corporate offices are moving down south? And now we're talking
The
about.
admission tax would have nothing to do with the moving of the corporation. Admission
Two different things.
Yeah.
There's the
I just want
admissions
to make
tax.
sure we're both on the same
No,
page.
we are. There's the admissions tax, and then there was supposed to be an additional $500,000 from Cedar Point based on restructuring. So restructuring means moving everybody here that's corporate from wherever they were at to the city of Sandusky, and now we're seeing them moving away. So is this committee in jeopardy of losing some money, which means that we have to reallocate money from issue 8 to this committee in the future, or what?
That would be something that our city manager, as we put together the budget.
Okay.
And I really wish my crystal ball was as clear as anybody else's.
Me
And,
too.
Matter of fact, I was talking to Michelle this morning, which has nothing to do with this committee. And we're trying to find out, and we won't know because we won't have our meeting till September, because I canceled the August meeting because the auditors can't get everything done. So I am hoping by September, we're going to have some idea, more concrete. And I think you bring up a very valid point, okay? Because there is no answer right now.
Right.
Which I would also piggyback that to say that those questions are way over this committee's
Yes.
head. I mean, I come here to pass out the funds that are here. If there aren't funds here, I won't come. I mean, that's all my knowledge
Yeah, I
is.
get that, but you guys are still a recommending committee to the city commissioner or city manager. And if we get to the point where we have to start moving money from issue 8, from streets, sidewalks, curbs, gutters, fire, and police, then maybe it's time for this committee to say, hey, you know what? We're losing this money from Cedar Point because they're moving down to Charlotte. Maybe we got to increase the admissions tax by 1% to make up for it, instead of shifting money from everyday.
Again, I don't.
I mean, that's so
That's
far.
going to be something for January 1st, maybe.
But that's none of this committee has nothing to do with any of that. I mean, we're not.
I think a real quick answer would be, that's why I want to know how much money we basically are going to have, how much dollars. In other words, what's in the checkbook? And if we need to move, and that doesn't go, and we've already allocated that money on, I just went blank on the building down on Eastwater or Washington or whatever. I would not be in favor of moving any kind of money anywhere. In other words, what we have is what we have.
Okay. Last 30 seconds. I have a good friend, she runs a restaurant. This committee approved money for her. She told me the other day that she has not received any verification of that money from anybody. So,
Can you help us?
what, at Port of Sandusky?
What's, I mean, I obviously am not administration, so I have no idea.
Right, well, we have the administrator here.
Yeah, we still need to enter into the grant agreement with Port of Sandusky. I have been in touch with the company, and we'll work to get that grant agreement in place as quick as possible.
Okay, so it's just a formality, paperwork, fill out, the whole thing. Very well, thank you, appreciate it.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Tom LaMarca. I'm sorry I don't know any of your names, but my concerns are the value, the dollar amounts on grants. And the numbers I've heard tonight or today were $300,000 for the small city tap house on a $617,000 project. So that's roughly, 48% that you're financing or granting them on their project. And I think those numbers are pretty high. This gentleman over here, again, I don't know your name and I don't know what you do. You talk about being in the banking business. So I'm wondering why on those larger projects, these aren't based on the 70-30% grant level versus a 50-50 or a 60-40. Let them have more into the game instead of the grant here, because you're giving those large amounts to those individuals. You're taking it away from somebody else that may be coming along or thinking of starting a business. And if I'm boring you with this, I apologize. And then I heard about a $139,000 grant at the very beginning, and I didn't know who that was going to, but it was kind of tabled until you get some more information. Then my other concern is
If we can take one at a
Collective.
time, because I'm not as smart as you are, and I got to kind of keep things. What was 139? Help me.
it was the very first one.
Can I, before you, because you're so many questions at once, just to get you an answer, like, this is from the packet, so let me just give you this piece of paper to show you more about the project you were just asking, and then that will kind of give you more. You can keep that.
This is mine?
Sure, sure. That's from the packet that goes out, but that's just something that, when you,
It
if
breaks-
you don't have it,
breaks
you're-
down to small city project a
yeah,
little.
that's just a good synopsis of the project there for you.
But the number you gave was for the facade, the front of the building and the roof. You had said that they had invested $2.6 million of their own funds, and that I assume was part of the brewery and the restaurant and all that other equipment. So that's out of the mix. We're dealing with the $617,000 for the roof and the front facade, the tuck pointing the windows and such. That's where your grant is coming from, am I correct?
Go, sir.
We don't consider that to be out of the mix. We did take that into consideration, the $2.6 million investment that the company's made already. They have invested significantly in the business and are looking to continue to do so. And that's where we came up with the recommendation of the figure that we proposed.
I'm not quite sure that's an answer, but, so then you're gonna.
Maybe I didn't understand the question. What's the question, sir?
So I just want to make sure that we understand your question. We want to answer your question.
What's the question?
The question is, they're going to do $617,000 worth of work. That was what was presented. That's what I heard. Is that wrong? And now I'm asking you, is that a wrong number?
That's not a wrong number, no.
Okay. And that was for the roof and front facade work. And of that $617,000 number, we're going to grant them $300,000. And all I'm suggesting is that instead of giving them, and again, I'm saying 48%, it could be off a percent or two, but you're going to grant them nearly 50% of that $617,000 improvement to the building. And I think that even though they've put in the brewery and spent the $2.6 million, I commend them for that, and I appreciate them for that. But I just think that, you're giving too much, but, that's your game or business, and maybe I shouldn't be concerned about it. But I just see it as $300,000 to one group is taking away monies from something else. I think the numbers are getting too big for some of these single applicants. I get it.
I see your point, sir. I see your point.
The other issue I have is repeat applicants. And I'm going now back to Derek Steiner. A couple of years ago, you granted them money to buy a new sign and some other equipment. And the moment that he was closing the Warren Street facility, that sign disappeared. So I'm kind of thinking maybe he took the sign and the equipment with him to the marketplace. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But I've seen other situations on other grants a couple of years ago where we got repeat people coming in and getting a handout, I shouldn't call it a handout, a grant. And, you know, you can keep coming back and getting money. I was always taught, you're in the banking business, that you go to a bank to get money. You're going to open a business and operate a business, you go to a bank, you get it. We're acting really as a bank, but as a charitable bank and giving them money. And I think it should be more for startups than to continue to help people who are kind of struggling. And I mean, he was on the east side, now he's going to the west side, and he's in the middle of the town. And I guess that's my point. You know, the other one is, if you give someone a grant and they go out of business, we have no way of getting any money back from them because we gave them the money. And maybe the grants should be tweaked a little bit. If you go out of business and we've given you a barrel of money, that we have a way of recapturing that. And the one that comes to mind is the pedal brew bike. Y'all remember that a couple of years ago? We invested in, I don't recall what it was, $25,000, $30,000 for the pedal brew bike. And then it operated about 3 times downtown, and that was the end of it. Now, who's got the bike? Who's the gentleman that got the grant still has the equipment, and it was a good gesture on the city's part, but that's $25,000 or $30,000 that really didn't get used, in my opinion, in the best interest. And that's it. I appreciate everything you're doing. It's just, my concerns are the way, you know, big dollars. We're dealing with big dollars.
We're here to listen and explain the best we can.
Thank you. I'll get to know all of you at some point down the road, I hope.
As far as numbers go,
Yeah.
I'm one of the lead directors of a $3 billion bank, and I'm one of the lead directors of a $1 billion hospital. So I kind of know some of the larger numbers.
Okay, and I understand that, and I'm not discounting any of that, but it just,
Well, I just want to let you know, and Paul sees some very large numbers also.
so then why aren't we you're used to dealing with big numbers, why aren't we dealing, it just astounds me that we're giving 50% of the money that they need, percent.
What are the bylaws? I mean, it's in the bylaws that we can actually go up to 60%, I think is how it's written, right? In when we lay out the program itself.
Yeah,
I'm never in
fact,
favor of that, but it says that.
I think 75 might be the number.
Up to 75.
Actually, yeah.
And I would just say, I appreciate your comments, and to me, when you get caught up in because at one point you mentioned, well, why don't we give it to startups? Well, when you talk about managing money, giving startups money is the easiest way to lose money, because the amount of startups that fail is astronomical. So that's one. Number two, because I'm also a lawyer by trade and a commercial banker, if you have a business that goes out of business and you've given them money, there is no way to get that money back. So what we are trying to do is, we're not just trying to help Derek's Diner be successful. We're not just trying to help Derek be successful. We're trying to draw people to this area so that because Derek has a nice sign, somebody sees it coming in from Toledo, they stop, they have great barbecue, they go tell somebody from Toledo, I had great barbecue, they come, they stop, maybe they go rent a kayak or they go to paddle and climb. So when you look at small city, 300,000 is a big number, without a doubt. But the amount of people that are drawn to this area from small city that go to shop at the shops, get parking tickets, do whatever. I mean, I'm a trickle-down guy, so you help small city. I think if you read their thing, I think it says they draw 200,000 people, customers annually there. The amount of money that those people bring in to the hotels, to the other restaurants, the other bars, I mean, to me, that's what I think economic development is, not necessarily, hey, this is a big number or that's a small number. That's just my personal opinion. So, I look at it as more of a global, if that building at Small City looks nicer, does he attract more people? Can he hold more events? If he holds more events, do we fill rooms at Hotel Kilbourne? Are people going over to Hot Dog Tony's? Are they getting on the boat and going to the islands and coming back? More of a trickle down, get here, get them here, have them spend more money. So Just my opinion.
Again, thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah.
Anything else from any of the committee members? If not, first of all, thanks for everybody actually being here, and we actually got to talk, in person, okay?
I haven't seen Jamarcus since Little League,
Well,
12 years old.
Yeah, he's got a real problem now, man. He's working, I mean, man, where he's working now.
I'll let you say it.
University, the one up north. And I will not despair anybody. I won't go that far. I don't even, okay, meeting adjourned. Next one is September 14th.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
I like your idea about taking that landscaping out of there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I didn't think that should